Because otherwise, Prabowo, as we see, is very, in a way, like Anwar Ibrahim. He has so-called friends all over the world. He can just any other countries would be like on first-name basis, maybe. Maybe we could just call Joe Biden like, hey, Joe, let's have a hamburger tonight. I want to talk about our relationship trade agreement with you.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Kopitiam Council. New week, new episode as usual. So we've already covered a series of elections that's been happening around.
So enough of elections, eh?
Enough elections, lah.
Enough of elections.
So we're going to be revisiting a topic that we covered a few weeks back. We talked about the interesting insight into Prime Minister's entry for Malaysia to participate with the Brics. If most of you didn't catch the episode, please do check that out because we did go into quite a lot of detail for it. But however, we are looking into our neighbor, which is Indonesia, and I wouldn't say it's an outright refusal, but they're not being so keen on participating in the Brics here. Indonesia has been very known to be quite participative for a lot of things. They've been very good at holding the ASEAN chairmanship for during its tenure.
In G20 as well.
Yeah, G20. So Indonesia has always been kind of a team player when it comes to engaging with regional partners. However, with Brics, there's a bit of contention or maybe even a bit of suspicion with participating. We've seen Malaysia trying to participate. I think it's going along quite well. Thailand as well, Saudi Arabia, and then we're going to see a lot more probably in the African region, probably in the South American region. So it's quite peculiar to see that Indonesia is trying to make this move, despite it being so proactive in making sure that ASEAN is a good regional organization that's able to handle all these multilateral international issues. So maybe that is the reason why. What do you think of this?
I think to go deeper into this, we think we need to start from the pre-independence of Indonesia, because that's when the Indonesia caught themselves in the middle between Soviet Union and United States of America. So they once play a role to I would say a bridge between Soviet Union and United States. So in this time around, I think they see themselves the same way, because Malaysia, Thailand, if Malaysia and Thailand are going to join BRICS, people are going to say, oh, definitely going to be because of economic interest. But if a player like Indonesia join in a certain organization, it's not just going to be economic interest, isn't it? Because in Indonesia, poised to be fourth most populous country in the world, and then also one of the highest GDP in the world. So once a big player, if you want to see it from that perspective, do something like this, a decision something like this, it's going to be huge, and it's going to be a lot of implications. That's why maybe the word "not keen" is maybe like you can say something like they would prolong to do more study on the implication if Indonesia were to join BRICS. I think Indonesia will be right to postpone this because they're having a changing of president soon in October. So I think it boils down to Prabowo, if he sees Indonesia can fit very well in BRICS, and BRICS definitely something that they want to be part in. Because otherwise, Prabowo, as we see, is very, in a way, like Anwar Ibrahim. He has so-called friends all over the world. He can just any other countries would be like on first-name basis, maybe. Maybe we could just call Joe Biden like, hey, Joe, let's have a hamburger tonight. I want to talk about our relationship trade agreement with you. Maybe he can do that because that's what Prabowo is. He is that kind of president compared to Jokowi, someone's, due all respect to him, used to be a furniture merchant. Yeah, so he came from all the way from that, and definitely different walk of life. And Prabowo, which we have, is different. Used to be a army general, son-in-law of a former president. So he carries a certain personality, and that translated into how Indonesia will see themselves in the world stage. So Indonesia will no longer be like, if you remember, during Indonesia hosting the G20, I think 2 years ago, it was very low key role that Indonesia play. It was just providing the venue in Bali, whatnot, and then there would be some spectacular gala dinner, but that would be it. There was no statement from Jokowi that would say something sort of radical, very different from what Jokowi would say out of G20 summit. So these are the kind of thing that where Indonesia are trying to balance the scale and see what is in it for them, because they could do a lot of things even outside of it. So if they are given the same status as Russia, all the five original founding members, I think that would be enticing for Indonesia. If they're just going to be another Malaysia or another Thailand in the bunch of I don't know, I think 40 countries now applying for Brics, then that's just downgrading Indonesia to a different level.
Yeah, I think you're very right when you say that Indonesia is trying to push its own weight around. It's trying to project its own weight, and I think, but I would like to disagree when it comes to how Jokowi downplays the whole, like, let's say, the G20. Right? I think that's not more so not to Indonesia's strengths. Rather, I think Indonesia is very experienced at this. They're very experienced at hosting all these huge, bigger events because historically they have had that strong power of convenement. The Bandung Conference back in the 1950s, when a lot of the emerging states in Africa and Asia, it was held. They had a conference, and it was held in Bandung, Indonesia. So that means Indonesia has historically always had the ability to gather all these, you could call developing countries or third world or global south countries, whatever you want to call it. And I think they're very good and experienced at that. And I think they want to maintain that kind of legitimacy and prestige as becoming sort of like a leader in itself, a regional leader. Maybe not towards the same aspirations and ambitions as, let's say, India or China, but it does have that middle power status attributed to it, which can be used to balance out all the greater power rivalries, like, let's say, China, America, Russia, and India. So I think that is what Indonesia is craving for when it comes to recognition. And I think by, like you say, postponing the idea of the Brics allows it more latitude in trying to navigate where does it want to place itself? Where does it want to project itself? Does it want to be a new sphere of influence that can counteract the Brics or at the same time attract for another arrangement, another regional arrangement? Or rather, I think Indonesia also still sees the value of ASEAN. It does not want to see it being diminished. I think out of all of the ASEAN member states, right, I think Indonesia is able to embody the principles of ASEAN better than most of the other member states. They have this whole musyawara and muafakat principles, which is confidence and consensus building. Indonesia is so good at that. And their diplomats are very finely trained and equipped to actually engage in all that. They know how to send the people out there to make sure that Indonesia is being a friendly partner to everyone, but at the same time being quite assertive as well. So I think this is a fledgling status for Indonesia in terms of the global ecosystem. And I think when it comes to the Brics, it does not want to diminish that rise in status. So maybe I would agree that it's trying to push its weight around. But I think we cannot underestimate the contributions that Indonesia has made to the regional and even the international community. I think it can be seen as, let's say, a third force, if you will. Okay, let's say the West is the West, right? And in a way, the global South has the Brics. Indonesia can serve as the third force, and it doesn't mean that because Malaysia is part of the Brics that we cannot be within the same arrangement or orbit as Indonesia. It gives that opportunity for other global South partners to have that alternative that can counterbalance the Brics. So that's the more wider geopolitical considerations.
Yeah, I think when people argue that because it's not just Indonesia, this region, Singapore as well, trying to delay their applications for the Brics, I think it is, like you mentioned in the other episode, that once you are in the Brics, you don't have to be anti-Western. It's not a zero-sum game where once you are here, no, you can still be part of other gathering and whatnot. So that's fine. But I think for Indonesia and Singapore, because they are like you said, like they have different weight to them, and then Singapore see themselves as already aligned with, yes, officially most of Asian countries are non-aligned, so this is correct, but also consensusly Singapore is seen also as following what the rule-based order, which is mastered by Washington, and I think Singapore somewhat doesn't want to disturb this because they already, it's not just needed, they are very deep in this, and they don't want to see as any sort of application to Brics would jeopardize that image that they've been riding so long since 80s 70s. So for them it's a huge jeopardy for to do something like this, but of course it's not for Malaysia and Thailand, because we are very, we are in United Nations also, we are in the OECD, WTO, but hey, guess what, we will be in Brics as well. So the approach, like I think Anwar Ibrahim also mentioned in Parliament recently, that the 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 approach here is that we want to be everywhere, and that shouldn't be any restriction to any country, including Malaysia, to just say, hey, you should be more aligned to this and not that, because in this world, creating a multipolar world would be a utmost a priority rather than just we giving in to Washington. And I think definitely for Indonesia, where they're poised to be very big in terms of population and GDP, and there's a lot of things that United States now, because they're sort of like want to reduce trade with China, so they see as Indonesia as one of the where they can outsource all this what they lack from China. So Indonesia knows and they position themselves like, hey, we are not desperate. Indonesia is not desperate to win any investment or whatever, because they know people will come to them with their mining their nickels, or want to leverage on their very cheap labor or their vast land. So they have all of it. So economically speaking, like I said, how they can benefit even more by joining, rather than just like sitting outside and still enjoy the benefit even more than Malaysia or Thailand once Malaysia and Thailand are in.
Yeah, I think that comes to a point where you can consider diminishing returns really. Like, for Singapore, it's very much, it's not that insulated compared to Indonesia. Indonesia has the foundations for a very resilient economy. Like you said, you mentioned the nickel. I think 25% of the global nickel reserves is in Indonesia. And it is mandated that whatever nickel it is extracted from Indonesia
Must be processed.
must be processed within Indonesian regulations by Indonesian companies. So I mean, let's say all these big tech companies come to Indonesia, they have to play by Indonesia's rules. So it has a lot of that resilience to it, and it won't be that affected to a lot of global considerations, like not like Singapore. Singapore, I think they are fine with playing the status quo because the status quo has the players that it can play well with. Malaysia, I think we're easier at playing with almost everybody, so we can be a bit more malleable. Indonesia, I think, is a different situation entirely. Is where that, okay, I can play by myself. I don't really need as much competitors or even partners because just by the sheer weightage of it, it will attract, like you say. Malaysia still is very much dependent on Indonesia. And I think a lot of the global south is also very much dependent on Indonesia. China as well, definitely. And make no mistake, I think there will come to a point where Indonesia's role in the region will become more and more important. And I think by not acquiescing yet to the Brics allows it more room to breathe, to be able to stand out a bit more from its contemporaries in Southeast Asia. But this does not mean, I'm not trying to say that Indonesia is in much ways better. I think it's rather to say that they are in a better position naturally. Yeah. And it comes down to their leadership, really, of like anything. They have a different set of cards that they are dealt with. And just like Malaysia has a different set of cards. And I think we have played them quite well in terms of foreign policy and in international engagements. So Indonesia has to play its own game here. I think it kind of wants to set its own path. And I think this has been something that in the making that was envisioned since independence. And with it being able to always draw in all these international actors, all these international bodies and other nation states over to Jakarta or Bandung or Bali, shows that it has that role to play, like a third force kind of role. So I do hope that Indonesia would prove to be a success story, that you like the true form of non-alignment, in a way that you can still be non-aligned but still partake in the international rule-based order, but at the same time you can also play domestically or even regionally by your own rules. You can be sustainable and resilient by your own how do you say, by your own sheer will. I think in a way it mirrors China as well, the rise of China's economy. China of course adopted much of the Western liberal market practices, but it made it its own thing. So maybe Indonesia is on the trajectory to say that, okay, this is Western, I mean international neoliberalism with Indonesian characteristics like China did.
Yeah, I mean, these are all projections. Like we talk about become fourth largest country in the world, highest top 10 GDP. These are all projections. That's why I think for the next 5 years, it will be interesting to see Indonesia under the leadership of Prabowo Subianto, that it will realize, if not all, maybe some of it, half of it, because we see a lot of, okay, Indonesia has some sort of equivalent of bamboo diplomacy also, which they call active bebas, where they should not be they should be non-aligned, and they want to do partnership with everyone at their will. So I think that is still the main priority, still the foundation of Indonesia is today. But also navigating the geopolitics today, it's not as easy as during the Sukarno time. So of course, this is not just Soviet Union and United States of America. This is more now. We have European Union and we have United Kingdom, which is not part of the European Union. How are they going to leverage on that? United Kingdom definitely keen on finding partnerships after their withdrawal from European Union. That's another thing. How about rising economies in Southeast Asia as well? Even locally in terms of Southeast Asia, these huge developing players like Vietnam, these people want more of that nickel that Indonesia has. So they don't need to play a world's game here. It's enough for Indonesia to just be dominant in ASEAN and see all the potentials become reality. So again, like you said, if Indonesia can just look inwards and become more sustainable in terms of that, I think that would be the best way. Yeah, but of course, joining Brics would be cherry on top. And like I said, if they can find that one particular thing that they couldn't get anywhere else, they would definitely join Brics. But I think at the moment, they still don't see it. And if once they see it, it will be a day they will join Brics.
Yeah, I mean, Indonesia still has a lot of its own arrangements it can still throw its weight around and make or even create, like, or even enhance, like with the Malacca Straits, which is already Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, or even, the exciting developments that's happening in Kalimantan with the new capital city. Now, I mean, a lot of people might say that the development of the capital city might not reap much economic benefits, but you never know what might happen. Like, it could start up I don't want to call it, a union in a way, but a Bornean prosperity sphere, so to speak, a kind of a trade agreement, a trade zone that can benefit Borneo itself, if Kalimantan, which is administrative capital.
It's Bimpiaga on steroids.
Bimpiaga on steroids. Maybe, or maybe can even empower the existing Bimpiaga as an institution, and then bring in the Southern Philippines as well. And that would make it more interconnected. Indonesia would be more involved in enhancing the region. Like when it comes to Indonesia, I think it's very well poised to not just project itself internationally, but has a nth degree projection within the regions that it already has. You look at the regions that Indonesia is involved in. It's it's a huge diversity of it. And each region can be a node for economic prosperity in itself. Like Sumatra, you have Kalimantan, and then you have even the east side of it, which it hopes to enhance as well. Of course, it still has to work out the arrangement with Papua New Guinea and Timor-Leste and East Timor. So it is exciting prospects all round for Indonesian leadership for this next half decade closing in. And then who knows, the next decade itself, we might see a greater emphasis on Indonesian leadership.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, it's all boils down to how Prabowo Subianto will be Indonesia, the president that Indonesia never have. So if he becomes, because I think after so many presidents, it was just we're talking about potential of Indonesia had. Like I mean, BJ Habibie in the late 1990s, and also Pa SBY. These are times that they really looking forward to it, but it never materialized. And Jokowi as well. Jokowi busy developing Indonesia in terms internally, infrastructure wise, whatever. Now Indonesia have the fastest train in Southeast Asia called Whoosh. And Malaysia still talk about how are we going to fund our ECRL. So, well, ECRL is still under construction. If not that, because of that one prime minister that decided to cancel everything, we could have already ECRL. Adi, you could go to Kuantan tomorrow. It's just 1 hour train ride. But
I'd be more
never
happier
happened.
for flying cars, to be honest.
Okay, you might want to wait for I don't know 100 years for that. I don't. But yeah, in terms of how Indonesia look, the outlook of Indonesia, I think it's very exciting. Nusantara, we mentioned about Nusantara. Nusantara may not be a big economic location, but it will play its role as a, because Kalimantan, as relatively speaking, is almost very low economic activity there. So if we have a catalyst like Nusantara there, the ripple effect will be not just throughout Kalimantan, but of course Sabah and Sarawak as well, which is what we are looking for. And it's exciting days ahead. We will see, I think, this month or next month, the official launching of Nusantara by President Joko Widodo. And I'm excited because they also will try robotaxi. I think flying robotaxi. So let's see if we can have a flying car in Indonesia next month.
Before Malaysia, that's very saddening to hear. But maybe, who knows, we can make a trip over to Nusantara and check out the whole situation there. But with that, I think we are out of time. So if you do like the contents of what we're talking about in this episode, the episodes prior, do leave a comment down. We're trying, like I said, podcast station in Puchong in Kuala Lumpur. It's different from KL podcast studio. So if you do like this setup as well, please do let us know, because me and Haffiz are always happy to try out all the fantastic studios that are happening in KL. And who knows, maybe we can see one in Sabah, in Kota Kinabalu eventually. So with that said, if you have any more recommendations for topics, just let us know. If you have any guests as well that you would like us to interview and bring on, then please also let us know. Any closing remarks, Haffiz?
Yes, if you are a fan of short form content, please follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well. We have posted daily contents there. And if you like to see a guest here that you said, oh, this guy should be on Kopitiam Council, please write your comment down below, because you know how it works, right? The algorithm on YouTube, the more you comment, the more it gets spread out. So see you next episode.